Hey everybody, it's Natalie McKenzie with The Whole Woman, and it's 6 o'clock here on the East Coast, so it's Quaran-Tea time. Today's guest is none other than Bishop DeAndre Salter of Impact Church. He's a senior pastor, he's also an entrepreneur, motivational speaker, financial expert, and an author. Help me welcome Bishop Salter. Throw up some hearts and make some noise.
Thank you for having me, Natalie. Thank you very much.
How are you, Pastor? Welcome, welcome.
I'm doing well. We are pressing through.
Awesome. Now, I'm very curious about your church, Impact Church. I like the name. And how did you end up as the bishop of this Impact Church? But more importantly, I can't help but notice your youthful appearance. So either you've aged quite well or you are one of the youngest bishops I've ever met.
Well, I think it's the latter. I actually am the youngest bishop in the state of New Jersey and one of the younger bishops in the country. So Impact Church is where my seat is. That's the church I pastor locally. But I was consecrated, ordained a bishop into dually the College of Bishops globally, as well as Macedonia International Bible Fellowship, where Bishop Kenneth Ulmer is my presiding. And so we oversee hundreds of churches around the country through that organization as well.
And I see that you've been a member of this church all your life. Tell me a little bit about your ending up as a pastor and how you got to being a pastor.
Well, my family is a family of faith. I am a fourth generation preacher. Our underpinnings are Pentecostalism. I lean more charismatic in my theological underpinnings. But just to watch this, Natalie, because you believe in women being authentic and becoming who they are and just being. So my grandmother started a church here in New Jersey in 1954 in the city of Newark, New Jersey, called Joy Tabernacle Church of God. So think about this: Pentecostal, female, Black preacher in a Baptist city in Newark in 1954. If there was this organization then and your movement and your ministry then, she could have certainly used it, but it wasn't. So it was tough sledding. She handed the ministry over to my mother, who pastored from 1993 up until the time that I became a pastor. So again, two incredible, powerful women. My mother pastored Joy Tabernacle Christian Ministries, and then I took over as pastor just about 11 years ago of Impact Church. So for me, ministry is kind of part of our ethos. It's part of our DNA as a family.
And you grew up in Newark, New Jersey.
That's right. The Brick City. I love it.
And now clearly I have to kind of go back a little bit, because clearly these women did something right, because here we are over 50 years later, and the church is still standing, it's growing, and you are making an impact in your community. So let's talk a little bit about your growing up in Newark, New Jersey, and how you were able to stay on the narrow path to being a bishop today.
Well, I didn't always want to be a bishop, a pastor, a preacher. To be honest with you, I was one of those kind of church kids who were forced to go to church because of the faith of the matriarchs in my family. And honestly, when in church culture, there's always kind of like a mother of a church or a matriarch in church who speaks over your life and says, "I see it all over you. You're going to be a preacher." And I used to abhor that statement because growing up in Newark, there's so many distractions. I mean, I came of age in the 80s. And the crack epidemic had hit the city. Stolen cars were a thing. Carjackings were a thing. So just the crime was rising and gangs were rising, all related to the drug trade. And there was so many distractions. And of course, I fell prey to those distractions as my friends fell prey to them. So I kind of grew up with one foot in the church and then one foot in the quote unquote streets. And for me, the whole tension was just trying to figure out who I was. And it took me kind of most of my young adult years. And I really didn't come into serious faith until my 20s.
And come into serious faith in your 20s, Bishop, that's pretty young. Most of us in our 20s are still trying to figure if we're going to graduate in 4 years.
Not when you're a fourth generation Pentecostal preacher.
So You grew up in New York. I see you're an entrepreneur. I see you're a financial expert, a motivational speaker. You're getting all this done. You're still quite youthful. Tell us a little bit about your journey and to getting to where you are today.
Well, so I was able to be blessed and get a scholarship to college, and it wasn't a full scholarship, but it was a educational scholarship that covered partial tuition. Went to Drew University in Madison, New Jersey, and I kind of lived the goal, or tried to chase the goal that most of us were taught. African Americans at that time were really pushed towards college education, and we were taught, hey, get a college degree, come out, get a job, and your whole new life is better. And I did all that. In fact, I graduated college, still to this day, one of the first students and only students to graduate in 3 years from Drew University. And believe me, Natalie, it wasn't because I was smart. I was too broke to stay there for the fourth year. So God had to move, I had to move, and I had to get off of campus. But what happened was I got the job, started working in corporate America, and again, dealing with folks who had different level of exposures to things, financial education wise and otherwise. I kind of spent all my money. I didn't live well in terms of being fiscally responsible. I ended up filing bankruptcy by the age of 21, even though I graduated college, at the age of 19.
So you graduated college early. You graduated 19. Now, I can do pretty good math. I graduated high school at 15. So you were probably 16 or 15 when you left high school. You're pretty smart, man. But you filed bankruptcy by 21.
Yeah. I filed bankruptcy by 21 because, again, my lifestyle. So we have this thing in the African American community that's kind of been a thing of ours for a long time that has historical context. It's called peacocking. And peacocking was something that we did around the turn of the century, which is to dress up well, to look good, to dress, quote unquote, to the nines at any cost. And it was to be taken seriously in public and not be taken as field hands or just stewards and baggage people. And so I did a little peacocking. I spent money on clothes, I built up credit card debt, but I also had a significant amount of my bankruptcy attributable to student loan debt, which is an issue still today. So because I didn't have the financial education, I wasn't making the right decisions, wasn't able to service the student loan debt. And so, at a young age of 21, I was forced into a bankruptcy because honestly, they started garnishing my wages at work. And that was an embarrassment for me as a young African-American professional, the only Black on the team or in the office. And then to see a garnishment from HR, I needed a way out.
So you're in the financial services. You were in the insurance industry. I know today your story is very different because now you've worked for several Fortune 100 companies, and today you even have your own insurance brokerage. Tell us a little bit about your career.
So after being an underwriter for Chubb Insurance Company post-graduation, I spent, 15 or so years on the underwriting side, quickly rose to executive ranks, left Chubb as one of the younger SVPs in the company, and started eventually after that my own insurance brokerage firm called Professional Risk Solutions. Professional Risk Solutions is celebrating its 18th year in business. We are the largest Black-owned insurance brokerage company in the world. We do business globally. We have offices, in the U.S. as well as in Jerusalem, Israel. And so I stayed in the financial services industry because insurance is kind of where I navigated towards after college.
Now, it's no secret you've been very successful. Excuse me. You've been very successful in that space, all this while pastoring, or you started pastoring while in the middle of your professional career. How have you been able to balance that, and how have you applied your lessons and financial lessons and your experience as an entrepreneur to your leadership?
Well, I appreciate the question because I do think there is overlap. So the lessons that I've learned in leadership is that ultimately, as leaders, we are called to make very critical, very thoughtful, very tough decisions. Whether it's the right decision will always be in the judgment of those who benefit or not from that decision. But as the leader, you're called to make a tough decision. I think what has blessed me in ministry is being a corporate executive before I was an entrepreneur, and then B, being an entrepreneur and having to bring things together, step out on faith, trust God for some really big things, resourcing, human resources, social capital resources, financial capital resources. And I had to learn how to put faith and works together because I was kind of a believer in the marketplace. So in ministry, I have a really practical ministry, meaning I really believe that ultimately ministry, we have to solve problems, right? We have to do what Jesus did. And what Jesus did was not just preach and theologize as I love to do, I love to preach, but he also healed people, met them where they were. He met a need. And I think that's what I really loved about bringing my two worlds together, because I come with a very progressive approach to ministry problems that I think I would have been able to do if I had not walked through the marketplace.
So I see, I first was introduced to you by a post I saw on Facebook for this random church, Impact Church. And the pastor started a fund called Impact Christian Business Fellowship to support the people in his community, entrepreneurs who were being impacted by COVID-19, requiring all businesses to be closed.
This is unprecedented. These times, unprecedented, and business owners are struggling in a way they never have before. I have a heart for that. That resonates with me because as a business owner, you supply jobs, you provide income and a means of income for people's family. So there's a real ministry aspect here, not to mention that Jesus is the son of a business owner, right? Mm. So those of us who are people of faith, Jesus is the son of a carpenter. His father had a carpentry business, which Jesus worked for 30 years before going into ministry. So there's a real connection between the business community biblically and the community of faith. In fact, the Bible doesn't sever those communities as often as we do. So as I begin to get phone calls and field phone calls as a local pastor and a bishop nationally, with concerns from small business owners, my heart was crying out because they were getting declined for PPP loans through the CARES Act. They were being declined with the red tape for unemployment as self-employed people. And I just said, we have to do something. So something very organic started. I donated, called up some key givers in our church, because our church, we practice radical generosity. They responded with gifts, and we kicked this thing off. We put it on Facebook. You gave, other people gave, and we raised so far about $18,000, of which pretty much all of that money's been distributed. No overhead, no red tape, right into hands of salon owners, consultants who've been able to keep their businesses afloat because of the generosity, that was shown in this. But we have much more work to do.
And so I noticed you had a goal at the time. It was $100,000. How are you doing with that? How much have you raised, and how have you been able to help others?
Well, we've raised about 18,000 of the 100,000, Natalie. And so we really are looking for influencers and corporate partners that will join in and help us reach that goal. We are, as of this Friday, the first round is closed, but in the second round, we're expanding our reach to provide grants to those businesses in the tri-state area, right? Mm-hmm. Because we want to go, while we started locally in New Jersey, we've already been able to fund businesses in 8 different counties in New Jersey. Grants range from $500 to $1,000. And the stories are absolutely amazing. I mean, there's just one business owner who had a sewing company that, was non-essential. And just the grant they received allowed them to be able to get their mobile vehicle back up in place where they can do things from a mobile standpoint that they couldn't do before. And that would not be possible without the generous gifts of people.
That's awesome. Now, since you're still in fundraise mode, we'd love to know how we can help you. So what is your website? So we can really ask our partners, our friends, to partner with us as we support the generosity and, of course, this practical work of God.
The easiest way to do so is just to go to our church website, which is churchforimpact.com. And there's a button that says give, click on give, and select the missions fund. Again, the Impact Christian Business Fellowship is a outreach, a missional ministry of Impact Church. So 100% that you give to that missions fund will go to these small business owners in the tri-state area. Those business owners, if you're a business owner watching and you need help, you simply can go to the same website, churchforimpact.com, You just scroll to the bottom of the page, click on ICBF, and the application to apply for funding is very easy. It's right there for you to do that as well.
So it's very important that we contribute, we give, we support, but it's even more important that those in need know where to go. Go to the same website, churchforimpact.com, and fill out the application. Now, Pastor, only because of COVID-19, this fund has become necessary. So we see how you're responding to the practical needs of the people, which is financial, because so many of us have been left unemployed as a result of this. But as a spirit-based organization, and how are you reaching the people? There have been so many deaths. I know you had a funeral earlier today. How is it you're ministering to your parishioners to keep them encouraged and motivated?
For us, we've really been hanging on to Isaiah 61:3. And in that passage, the prophet says, speaking of Jesus, that he gives provision for those who mourn in Zion. And then the second part begins that he will exchange beauty for ashes and give us a garment of praise instead of the spirit of heaviness. So we've been hinging on that. And so what we've been doing is, first of all, we moved our church services online very early out of a concern for public health and safety, because we're very people first. And so we put everything online, and we focused on prayer in the first 30 days with a 30-day prayer focus that's still available for those who want to take a part of that with their families. But we focused on prayer calls, praying every day, the same focus. But now we're making a shift in the month of May towards encouragement and worship, because that verse says a garment of praise. And you know what I love about a garment is something you must choose to put on, but it covers you as long as you choose to wear it. And so that's what praise looks like. That's what worship looks like. So now we're trying to minister in that manner, because that's what the church is here for. I'm here to help you be hopeful in a season of hopelessness.
Bishop, tell us about your congregation, the demographics of your congregation, and how many people are you currently serving?
Great question. So we are a very transgenerational ministry. When we moved to South Plainfield, 10, 11 years ago, we had 35 people. And now every weekend we're gathering with 4,000 to 5,000 people online as well. And even prior to COVID, our church was growing consistently, 600, 700 families part of our church. So it's very almost a third between X and boomers, Ys and Zs. It's a great church.
I see online that you have a very active, very professional, very active online presence. And I see your program for the iKids Impact and your teen program. So it seems as though you're covering all your bases. Tell me about some of the programs you have upcoming during this period while we're still quarantined. And cheers, tea.
Tea time.
Quarantine and having our tea and trying to cope with this new normal.
Well, one of the things I'm really excited about is beginning this Friday, as I said, the month of May for us is to speak to the people everywhere. Just encouragement and worship, and just encouragement through worship, and worship until you feel encouraged. And so starting this Friday, every Friday at 12, from 12:30, we want to help break up the Zoom day, right? We're all on the computer screens all day, and we want to make you laugh. So we have comedians that are, come on every Friday from 12 to 12:30. I'm going to join them and host, and we're just going to make you laugh right at your screen, so you can just take it down and relax and bring the stress level down and just receive ministry that way. That's one of the things we're really excited about in this next season.
And, as you talk about laughter, because we know laughter is good for the soul, are you finding that you have a higher incidence of emotional challenges or depression with your congregants? Are you a congregation that has a lot of first responders? What are you finding the emotional state of your congregation to be?
That's a great question. I mean, I think it's all the above. I lean very prophetically attuned. I try to have sight and sense with my heart what's happening with the people. And one of the ways we get the feedback is through our prayer call center. So in the last 30 days, we've also launched a prayer call center, which is open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. And so when you kind of look at the requests that are being made, people are just really concerned about their families. which actually is good that we're all concerned about our families. I think that's the heart of God, that we are concerned about our families. So what I'm just sensing is that everybody's working harder. Being on the screen is not easier. It's actually harder because it's hard to divide the day and the week from the weekend. And so what we're just sensing is that we've established ourselves in prayer. Many people have been praying, but we have to do self-care in another way. And I think worship is the next phase for us to be uplifted, all of us.
You mentioned family. How are you coping with your family? Tell us about your family. I see you've been married for 24 years to the same person. Woohoo!
That's right. Black love. I tell you, I love them.
Beautiful. And your children. Tell us a little bit about that.
All right. So Terry and I have been married. We'll be celebrating 25 years this July. And she's the one who, see that cup? She's the one. This is her ministry. Everybody has their name on the cup. And, so we're kind of a goofy family. I have 4 children. 3 of them are grown, a 22-year-old, a 21-year-old, and a 20-year-old as of Monday. And then I have a 14-year-old. But honestly, they've been great. We've been having a great time. We spend Mondays, historically, I spend Mondays ministering to my family. I cook a gourmet meal, everything from scratch, fresh ingredients. We call it our Monday Sabbath. We cut off our devices at dinner time. We cut off the television. We sit, we turn on music, we just talk, we eat, and we just love on each other. So I'm very proud of them. They've been doing great, even though we all have cabin fever.
Oh, that's awesome. And your college age kids obviously are home and everyone's getting along well while still doing their distance learning. This is wonderful. Now, I noticed on your website, I saw the name Salter a few places. So it suggests that your mom still in ministry with you and other family members?
Praise God, my mom is still alive. She's literally a living miracle. That's a whole nother story to tell at another time. But yeah, so she preceded me in ministry. And the beautiful thing, let me tell you about strength. Strength is when you can see the future, step back and help it come to pass through someone else. That's what my mother did. She's an incredible, powerful woman who was able to be sensitive enough to see the future in me. But so she serves in ministry, and she served me as her pastor as hard as I served her as my pastor previously. Beautiful.
Oh, that's wonderful, Pastor. That's very good. Now, I notice I am very sensitive to churches and how church use their financial resources and the whole thing of tithing, et cetera, and finances and Christians, especially in the Black community. And I noticed you have a project upcoming called The Culture of Money. And my husband talks about money having a rhythm and a personality. Talk to me about the culture of money.
Listen, Black people are cultural influencers. And when you think about Black people and culture, you can see our influence in everything, from the way we sing, to the way we dance, to the way we dress, to the way we cook. And so we're synonymous with being influencers of the wider culture with everything except one area, money. And that's a problem, because that problem can be contextualized in this fact. There's a wealth transfer tsunami happening, and we're oblivious to it. By 2045, $68 trillion, Natalie, you know this is going to transfer hands from one generation to another. That's called the wealth gap. And so COVID is going to make this worse. And there's this great gap where there are going to be people who have more resources and more capital and more means to make their dreams come true. Meanwhile, our people are going to be further left behind. So the culture of money is a simple 3-point platform that we would know more, which speaks to financial education, that we would own more, of course, speaking to ownership of the right assets, and that we would pass down more, which speaks to legacy, planning, and having sight for the future. My goal is to mobilize our community and particularly use the Black church, a historical place for us to find social change and progress, to equip Black churches, small and large, with the tools to disciple people into financial health, because I think it's a discipleship issue.
And this is a book that we can expect on our shelves when, Bishop?
Oh, you hold me to it. You sound like the editor and everyone else. Listen, I'm done with my part. Guess what? The good news is in editing as we speak. Let's just say soon to be released. And then we're going to have a whole platform again with courses and and workshops and everything so that we have a full delivery system so that we're not just talking about it, but we're able to help churches be about it.
And you mentioned something that caught my attention, social capital. What
Yeah.
exactly is social capital?
Well, what I found after graduation is even though graduating from college and start my corporate career, even as I progressed and went from bankruptcy to being successful, the key difference that I learned on the other side was about social capital. Social capital is the ability or the access to people of influence, people of means, people who can take interest in your vision and dreams, people in the position of authority that can make decisions that benefit you or open doors. Most of us don't have social capital. I even saw it on the board level. When I was on the board of Junior University, I sat over the tenure committee, and oftentimes when African-American professors would come up from contracted tenure, they would have the resume and the pedigree, but they didn't have they had the resume, but not the pedigree. So they didn't study under the right person. They didn't have the right connections. So one of my aims is also to teach us and then help us to learn how to prosper from and seek to build social capital as well.
I noticed, and we're very short on time now, but I can't help but ask this question. I noticed you have a big platform for mentorship, and mentorship for you seems a little non-traditional. Tell me a little bit about how you're helping others, other churches, other people.
Well, as a bishop, Natalie, my goal is for the church at large. And so again, while Impact Church is where my local ministry focus is, we're helping churches in South Africa, on the West Coast, in the South and Midwest. That's what we do. So our goal, even with the culture money, is to use the legs of the churches, particularly small, mid-sized churches. I mean, there was a church recently in Brooklyn that we brought our workshops to. We worked with that congregation, and the feedback and the outcomes were amazing because like your husband said, we're helping people identify their money personalities and get control of their money emotions. Again, because we see fiscal responsibility and stewardship as a discipleship function of what the church can provide.
Now, what is Impact Church's take on tithing? Because I know as we talk finances and we talk money in church, there's the misconception that it's name it, claim it, send me your money and I'll get rich and you stay poor.
Well, listen, that has happened to some people. I mean, because the doctrine of what they call that prosperity preaching is a false doctrine. It does purport that one's faith opens doors to every resource. And if you don't have resources, you don't have faith. And the way to unlock your faith is to quote unquote sow a seed. We don't teach that because it's just theologically incomplete, if not necessarily wrong, but just incomplete. We teach tithing in our church. Why? I teach tithing because Jesus teaches tithing. Tithing is not an Old Testament practice. Tithing is a New Testament concept that Jesus affirms even in the New Testament scriptures, saying that it's something that we should continue to do. So tithing is basically 10% of our income that is given to the church to do work in the community, to pay for staff, to do ministry. Ministry is not free. And so there's no way, if you want to say tithing is illegal or shouldn't be done, you're going to have a bigger problem when you get to Acts chapter 2, because Acts chapter 2, Natalie, the apostles asked them to give all of their money to the church, and they did it 100%, laid it at the feet of the apostles. So tithing is actually quite the deal compared to where the apostle Paul would have and the apostle Peter would have driven us towards.
Well, Bishop Salter, it has been an absolute pleasure. And I must say to everyone out in Facebook Live world that you are the first guest we've had on that I did not have an existing relationship before today. But I must say you're quite warm and engaging. I am very interested in your platform, and we look to continue to support Impact Church. And I am eager to learn about the culture of money because it sounds oh so familiar. And I'm looking forward to meeting your lovely wife, Terry, and visiting with you at Impact Church. Bishop, what parting words would you like to give us today as we go off to continue to be quarantined during these new times?
Thank you for having me, first of all. I think your work that you're doing is incredible. I just want to say to everyone out there, unprecedented times will cause a shift, and every shift that you have is not bad. This is a good shift. I think we should attune ourselves spiritually to hear what God is saying to us on the earth about stewardship. Steward the earth better. He gave humanity the earth. Steward our corporations better. We shouldn't be treating employees like trash, taking advantage of them. Steward our lives better. We need to take care of our bodies. We need to take care of our finances. We need to take care of our family. And I think if we get this holistic message on stewardship, you're going to be just fine. Trust me, God's not through with you yet. You're coming through this.
Bishop DeAndre Salter, what an absolute delight and a pleasure. It is an honor to speak with you today. And to our friends out in Facebook world, remember, go to Impact for
Churchforimpact.com.
Churchforimpact.com. So we'll have the pleasure of helping to support him make a difference in our community. It's such an honor and such a joy to talk with you. Very lovely man. Thanks for watching Quaran-Tea Live with Natalie McKenzie of The Whole Woman. I wish you enough life to live, enough joy to give, enough love to share. I wish you enough. And we'll see you tomorrow with Carolina Denhard of Divorce Dynasty. Go figure. Thank you, Bishop.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.